They say that when one door closes, another one opens. I believe that. I had to believe that, because if I didn't, I would have drowned in my own bitterness. I never imagined I would be the kind of man who would come home to find another man's tie under his bed. But there it was. A silk tie, navy blue with tiny white dots, lying carelessly on my bedroom floor like some forgotten trophy. At first, I told myself it had to be a mistake. Maybe it belonged to a friend. Maybe I had seen it before. I tried to convince myself of every possible explanation except the most obvious one. But then, the whispers began, the hushed conversations I overheard when I entered a room, the way my neighbors averted their eyes when they saw me. Then came the night I knew for certain. I was coming home late, exhausted from work, the kind of exhaustion that burrows deep into your bones. As I waited for the elevator, I saw them. A man, stepping out of my apartment, buttoning his shirt. My wife, standing in the doorway, whispering something to him. It wasn't just the scene that broke me, it was the way she looked at him. The way she touched his arm as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I stood frozen as the elevator doors slid open. She looked up and saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the world narrowing down to the three of us in that dimly lit hallway. The man, sensing the shift in the air, mumbled something and hurried past me. I didn't say a word. Not then. Not until we were alone inside. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look ashamed. I was lonely, she said simply, as if that excused everything. As if I should understand. There was nothing left to say after that. The divorce was swift, clinical. She got the apartment, I got my dignity, what little remained of it. I walked away with a suitcase, a few shirts, and a heart so hollow I thought it would never beat the same way again. Work became my refuge. If I was drowning in contracts and negotiations, I didn't have time to think about the past. But the anger lingered, not just at her, but at myself. Had I been too boring? Too predictable? Had I failed as a husband? I convinced myself I needed a change. A transformation. A new wardrobe. A sharper haircut. A car that announced to the world that I was someone to be noticed. I wanted to be the kind of man who would never be left behind again. And that was when I met her. Sophia. She was everything my ex-wife wasn't. Playful, mysterious, with a smile that could disarm the most guarded heart. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something that had been missing. Hope. Sophia entered my life like a spark in dry grass, sudden, bright, and impossible to ignore. I first noticed her at work. She wasn't the type of woman you overlooked. The way she carried herself, the way she laughed, it was effortless, magnetic. I wasn't the only man drawn to her. Every guy in the office wanted her attention, but she had a way of keeping them all at a distance, as if she enjoyed watching them try. I told myself I wasn't interested. That I was done with love, with relationships. But there was something about her that made me forget every lesson my past had taught me. Our first real conversation happened at a company party. It started as a joke, a bet between me and my colleagues. A bottle of vodka to whoever had the guts to approach her first. I wasn't supposed to win. But as I watched them hesitate, hiding behind their bravado, I felt something shift inside me. I had spent too much time in the shadows, watching life happen to other people. I wasn't going to be that man anymore. So I walked up to her. I didn't use any clever pickup lines. I just asked her if she wanted to talk. And to my surprise, she smiled. That night, we talked for hours. She had this way of making you feel like the only person in the room, as if every word you said mattered. And when we danced, God, when we danced, it was as if nothing else existed. She moved like she owned the floor, like she owned me. By the end of the night, I was giving her a ride home. By the end of the week, we were inseparable. It felt like a dream. Sophia made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. She challenged me, teased me, pulled me out of my comfort zone. When we were together, I wasn't just some guy who had been cheated on, I was someone she wanted. Someone she desired. For the first time in a long time, I felt like a man again. People noticed the change in me. My friends, my coworkers, even my family. Some were happy for me, others, less so. My mother, especially, didn't approve. "She's not right for you," she said one evening, as we sat in her kitchen. I laughed it off. "You don't even know her." "I know enough," she said. "There's something about her. Something I don't trust." I should have listened. But I was too far gone. A few months later, I proposed. She said yes. And that was when the nightmare began. I should have seen the signs earlier. Looking back, they were everywhere, subtle hints, fleeting moments when Sophia's mask slipped, revealing something darker beneath. But love makes you blind, and I was no exception. The first few months after our engagement were perfect. Or at least, that's what I told myself. We moved in together, blending our lives as seamlessly as possible. I was thrilled. I had a beautiful fiancée, a promising career, and the chance to finally rewrite my story. But Sophia? Sophia was changing. At first, it was small things. She started rearranging my apartment without asking. One evening, I came home to find my wardrobe completely reorganized. Shirts hung in perfect color coordination, shoes lined up like soldiers. My old leather jacket, the one I had since college, was missing. I found it in the trash. I asked her why she threw it out. "It was old," she said, giving me a dismissive wave. "You don't need it anymore." I laughed it off. Maybe she just liked things tidy. Maybe she was trying to help. But then it got worse. She began criticizing everything I did. The way I folded my clothes. The way I left my toothbrush on the sink. The way I made my coffee in the morning. "If you're going to do it wrong, don't do it at all," she'd snap, snatching the mug from my hands. She started going through my phone. At first, it was playful. A casual glance when I got a message. Then it became a habit. "Who's this?" she'd ask, holding up my phone, my screen open to a conversation with a female coworker. "A colleague," I'd reply, confused. She'd stare at me for a long moment, her dark eyes unreadable. Then she'd smile, press a kiss to my cheek, and say, "I trust you." But she didn't. I caught her one night, scrolling through my messages while she thought I was asleep. When I confronted her, she didn't apologize. Instead, she turned it around on me. "If you have nothing to hide, why does it bother you?" The worst part? I started questioning myself. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe love meant letting someone in completely, even if it meant giving up pieces of yourself. So I let it go. I let everything go. The nagging. The jealousy. The silent treatment whenever I did something she didn't like. I let it go because I loved her. Because I believed that love was supposed to be difficult sometimes. Then came the rage. It happened after I criticized a set of porcelain dishes she bought. I didn't think it was a big deal, I just mentioned that they weren't really my style. She went quiet. Then, without warning, she grabbed a plate and hurled it across the kitchen. It shattered against the wall. I stared at her, stunned. Before I could say anything, she grabbed another and smashed it. Then another. "You don't appreciate anything I do for you," she screamed. I tried to calm her down, but she wasn't listening. She picked up a cup and threw it at the floor, her whole body shaking with anger. Then, just as suddenly, she crumpled to the ground, sobbing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I just want everything to be perfect for us. I should have left then. But I didn't. Instead, I held her. Told her it was okay. Told myself it was just stress, that it wouldn't happen again. I was wrong. The next time, it was worse. It was my 30th birthday. She bought me a suit. It was expensive, tailored, clearly something she had put a lot of effort into. I appreciated the gesture, but when I tried it on, I realized it wasn't really my style. I told her as gently as I could. She didn't respond. Instead, she walked into the kitchen, grabbed a pair of scissors, and without a word, began cutting the suit into pieces. I stood frozen, watching as she destroyed the gift she had given me only moments before. When she was done, she threw the ruined fabric at my feet. If you don't want my gifts, you don't deserve them. Then, as if nothing had happened, she smiled, kissed my cheek, and walked away. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to leave. Pack a bag and never look back. But another part of me, the part that still saw the woman I had fallen in love with, clung to the hope that things would get better. I told myself she just needed time. I told myself she loved me. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. And deep down, I knew it. I spent the next few months walking on eggshells. Every word I spoke, every action I took, it all felt like a potential trigger. One wrong move, and Sophia would explode. But instead of recognizing that this wasn't normal, I told myself that maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was too critical. Maybe I was too distant. Maybe I just didn't understand her the way she needed to be understood. So, I adjusted. I let her take control. She picked my clothes. She decided what we ate. She dictated how I spent my time. And for a while, things seemed peaceful. She even started showering me with affection again, kisses, whispered words of love, gestures so sweet they made me forget all the chaos. But then, just as I started to believe we had turned a corner, something happened that I couldn't ignore. It was a Saturday. I had planned to meet some old friends for dinner, something I hadn't done in months because Sophia always had a reason for me to stay home. That morning, she was all smiles. She even encouraged me to go. You should see your friends, she said, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. Have fun. I should have known better. I should have known it was a trap. I left at 7 p.m. By 7:30, my phone was vibrating non-stop. Sophia asterisk, where are you? Sophia asterisk, why aren't you answering? Sophia asterisk, who are you really with? Sophia asterisk, you don't love me, do you? I sighed, showing my friends the texts with a forced chuckle. She just worries, I said. I'll call her and calm her down. Big mistake. The moment I answered, she was crying. I don't feel well, she sobbed. I think I'm having a panic attack. Concerned, I asked what was wrong. You left me, she whispered. I just can't breathe. And just like that, I was on my way home. When I arrived, she was curled up on the couch, red-eyed and trembling. I rushed to her side, but she pulled away. You don't care about me, she whispered. That's not true, I said. I left because you told me to. She stared at me, her eyes cold and calculating despite the tears. Would you have left if I told you I needed you? I didn't know what to say. I had been manipulated before, but never like this. Still, I stayed. I apologized. I held her as she cried, even though a small voice inside me screamed that something was very, very wrong. The next morning, she was back to normal. No mention of the night before. No trace of the weeping, fragile woman I had comforted. Instead, she hummed a tune as she made coffee, kissed my cheek, and acted like everything was perfect. And I let her. Because facing the truth meant admitting that the woman I loved was dangerous. Slowly, without realizing it, I lost touch with everyone. Friends stopped inviting me out because they knew I would decline. My family grew distant, exhausted by the excuses I made for Sophia's behavior. Even at work, I was different. People used to tell me I was the guy who always had a joke, always had a smile. But now I was the guy who checked his phone constantly. The guy who left early. The guy who looked drained. One day, my mother called. "I'm worried about you," she said. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. "You're not," she said. "We barely see you anymore. And when we do, you look lost." I wanted to tell her everything. But instead, I lied. "Things are just busy, Mom. You know how it is." She was quiet for a moment. "Lucas," she finally said, "she's not good for you." I flinched. "You don't understand her," I snapped. "No," she said softly. "But I understand you. And I can hear it in your voice. You're not happy." I hung up. Because deep down, I knew she was right. But admitting that meant accepting that I had made a mistake that had cost me my freedom, my peace, my very sense of self. And I wasn't ready to do that yet. The final straw came in the form of a cat. One evening, I came home to find Sophia cradling a small, black kitten. "Meet our baby," she said, smiling. I blinked. "Our what?" "Our child," she said, pressing the tiny creature against her cheek. "I was thinking we could name him Leo." I frowned. "Sophia, we never talked about getting a pet." She looked at me like I had just insulted her. "Do I need your permission?" she asked, her tone sharp. "That's not what I—" But it didn't matter. She had already made her decision. And just like that, Leo became part of our lives. At first, I didn't mind. He was a good cat, quiet, affectionate, easy to care for. But Sophia treated him like he was an actual baby. She bought him outfits. She spoon-fed him special meals. She even talked to him in a soft, motherly voice, cradling him like an infant. And the worst part? She started referring to herself as Mommy, and me as Daddy. One night, as we lay in bed, she turned to me and whispered, "Do you love him?" "He's a good cat," I said cautiously. "No," she said, her voice turning ice cold. "That's not what I asked." I swallowed. "Sophia, he's an animal." Her face twisted in fury. "How dare you," she spat. "Leo is our baby. How can you be so heartless?" I sighed, exhausted. "You want kids, don't you?" I asked. "Maybe that's what this is about." Maybe. I didn't even see the slap coming. One moment, I was speaking. The next, my face was stinging, and Sophia was glaring at me with unfiltered rage. "How dare you assume what I want," she hissed. I stared at her, my cheek burning. And that was it. That was the moment I knew, I had to get out. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't keep making excuses. Sophia had turned my life into a waking nightmare. And if I didn't leave now, I might never escape. After that night, something inside me snapped. I couldn't unsee what had just happened. I couldn't excuse it, rationalize it, or pretend it didn't mean anything. She had hit me. She had actually hit me. And yet, instead of packing my bags and walking out the door, I stayed. Why? Because I was trapped. Not by locked doors, not by physical chains, but by fear. By guilt. By the twisted illusion that leaving her meant failing her. She didn't apologize for the slap. Not once. Instead, she pretended it never happened. She smiled at me the next morning like everything was fine, like we were the perfect couple, like she hadn't lashed out at me just hours before. And I played along. Because I didn't know what else to do. But something changed after that. The moment she realized I wouldn't fight back, she escalated. Sophia had always been controlling, but now, she became ruthless. She monitored my phone, questioned my every move, accused me of things that never happened. "Why were you online at 11:52 p.m. last night? Who were you talking to? Your coworker, Emily, she smiled at you today. Are you sleeping with her? Why didn't you kiss me the moment you walked in? Are you tired of me?" No answer was ever good enough. No reassurance ever satisfied her. She wanted me guilty. And when she couldn't find a real crime, she created one. Once, I came home 5 minutes late from work. 5 minutes. I opened the door and found her sitting on the couch, silent, her arms crossed over her chest. I knew immediately, something was wrong. "Hey," I said cautiously. Traffic was bad. She didn't respond. I stepped closer. "Sophia?" Still nothing. Then, without warning, she grabbed the glass of wine on the table and threw it at the wall. Red liquid splattered everywhere. Shards of glass rained onto the floor. I flinched, heart pounding. "What the hell? You were with her, weren't you?" she screamed. Who asterisk? I asked, genuinely baffled. "Emily." I stared at her. "Sophia, I was at work." She shook her head, eyes wild. "You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see the way you look at her?" I exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. "I don't even talk to Emily." But it didn't matter. She didn't want the truth. She wanted chaos. And I gave it to her by engaging, by defending myself, by trying to reason with someone who didn't want to be reasoned with. That night, she refused to sleep in the same bed as me. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She greeted me with a kiss, made my coffee, and asked if I wanted pancakes. Like it was all just a bad dream. And I let her. Because I was tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of proving my innocence. Tired of the endless cycle of love bombing and destruction. I started to believe that this was just my life now. That I had chosen this. That I deserved it. The worst part wasn't the abuse itself. The worst part was watching myself disappear. I stopped seeing friends. I stopped answering calls from family. I stopped making decisions for myself because I knew, no matter what I did, it would be wrong in her eyes. One night, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back at me. I looked empty. Like a puppet on strings. Like someone who had given up. And for the first time, I admitted something I had been afraid to even think. I was afraid of her. I was afraid of the woman I shared a bed with. Afraid of her anger. Afraid of what she might do next. Afraid that if I stayed, I might never get out. And yet, I still didn't leave. Because fear is a funny thing. It doesn't push you into action. It paralyzes you. It convinces you that escape is impossible. And I believed it. For a while, I really believed it. Until the night everything changed. The night I finally realized just how dangerous she really was. It started like any other argument. I don't even remember what set it off. Something trivial, something meaningless, an offhand comment, a glance in the wrong direction, an answer that wasn't enthusiastic enough. But this time, she didn't just yell. She didn't throw things. She didn't break down in tears. This time, she did something far worse. She went into the kitchen. Opened the drawer. And pulled out a knife. A long, sharp kitchen knife that gleamed under the light. I froze. She gripped the handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her chest heaved with uneven breaths. "You don't love me," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "Sophia, put that down. You're going to leave me," she continued, as if she hadn't heard me. I took a slow step back. "I'm not leaving," I said carefully. Let's just talk, okay? She tilted her head. Then, without warning, she pressed the tip of the blade against her own wrist. I felt my stomach drop. Don't, I breathed. Tell me you love me, she demanded. Sophia. Tell me. My heart pounded. I love you, I said, the words rushing out in panic. She stared at me, unblinking. Then, suddenly, she smiled. She smiled. Like she had won. And just like that, she dropped the knife onto the counter, wiped her tears, and walked past me like nothing had happened. I stood there, shaking, my breath shallow, my mind screaming at me. She had crossed a line. This wasn't just manipulation anymore. This was dangerous. And I finally understood. If I didn't leave soon, I might not make it out alive. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the knife. The way she held it. The look in her eyes. The eerie smile after I told her I loved her. She had meant for me to be afraid. And it had worked. The next morning, I woke up exhausted. My body felt heavy, my thoughts sluggish. I couldn't even look at Sophia without feeling my stomach twist in knots. But when she turned to me with her usual fake sweetness, I played along. Good morning, love, she cooed, running a hand through my hair. I forced a smile. Morning. Are you still mad about last night? She pouted. I shook my head, swallowing down the nausea rising in my throat. No, it's fine. She grinned, pleased with herself. I realized then, she enjoyed this. The control. The fear. The knowledge that she could push me as far as she wanted, and I would always stay. It wasn't a loss of control that made her dangerous. It was the control itself. That's when I knew. I had to get out. The silent plan. I couldn't just pack a bag and walk out. She would never allow it. I had to be smart. I had to be careful. I had to make her believe that everything was fine. So I played the game. I kissed her when she wanted affection. I agreed with everything she said. I made sure she had no reason to suspect I was planning anything. And, in secret, I started preparing. I reached out to my brother, Daniel, using an old work phone I had hidden in my car. I need help. That was all I texted. Within minutes, he called me back. What's going on? He asked, his voice tense. I hesitated. How could I possibly explain? How could I tell him that the woman he thought was my loving wife had become a monster? She's dangerous, I finally said. I need to get out, but I can't do it alone. Daniel didn't ask questions. Tell me what you need. I told him everything. We came up with a plan. He would come to pick me up in 2 days, while Sophia was at work. I would pack only the essentials, enough to leave quickly. Then I'd go straight to my parents' house and cut off all contact. It wasn't a perfect plan. But it was all I had. I just had to survive 2 more days. The trap I didn't see coming. The next 48 hours were torture. Every moment spent near Sophia felt like walking through a minefield. One wrong move, one suspicious look, and she would know something was off. But I played my role well. I acted like the loving husband she wanted me to be. I reassured her, showered her with attention, let her believe she had won. I thought I was being careful. But I had underestimated her. Because somehow, she knew. The night before I planned to leave, I woke up to the feeling of something brushing against my cheek. I opened my eyes. And there she was. Sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at me. I flinched. Sophia? She tilted her head. You've been acting strange. My heart pounded. What? No, I haven't. Her fingers traced down my arm, slow and deliberate. You think I don't notice? You think I don't see it in your eyes? I swallowed hard. You're imagining things. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Am I? She leaned in close, so close I could feel her breath against my skin. Then she whispered. You're never leaving me, Lucas. My blood ran cold. She knew. And she wasn't going to let me go. My breath hitched. I could feel the heat of her breath against my skin, her words like a whisper of poison sinking into my mind. Asterisk, you're never leaving me, Lucas. Asterisk. I forced myself to stay calm, to control my breathing. If I panicked, she would sense it. If I reacted the wrong way, she would do something. I had seen it before, the way her anger could explode without warning. So I swallowed my fear and forced a chuckle. What are you talking about? I asked, feigning confusion. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out, her fingers trailing lightly across my chest. A gentle touch, one that would have been affectionate under different circumstances. But now, it felt like a silent threat. I saw you sneaking around, she murmured. I froze. Saw me? When? How? Had she gone through my phone? Checked my messages? Followed me to my car? My mind raced, searching for an escape, an excuse, anything that would buy me more time. Sneaking around? I repeated, keeping my voice light. Sophia, you're being paranoid. Her fingers suddenly tightened, nails digging into my skin. Don't lie to me, she hissed. I clenched my jaw to keep from flinching. She knew. But how much? Did she know about Daniel? About my plan to leave? Or was she just testing me, fishing for a confession? I couldn't afford to take the risk. So I did the only thing I could think of. I reached up, cupped her face, and smiled. I love you, Sophia, I whispered. Her expression wavered. For a second, I saw doubt flicker in her eyes, like she wasn't sure if she should believe me or not. Then, just as quickly, she smirked. Good, she murmured. Because if you ever tried to leave me, Lucas, I don't know what I would do. She leaned in, pressing a slow, lingering kiss against my lips. But I couldn't feel anything except the cold grip of fear. The next morning, I woke up to find my car keys missing. My phone, too. Panic surged through me. Had she taken them? I searched the apartment, but they were nowhere to be found. I turned to her, keeping my tone light. Hey, have you seen my keys? She looked up from her coffee, her expression unreadable. No. Lie. I forced a chuckle. That's weird. I swear I left them on the table. She sipped her drink, watching me over the rim of her cup. Maybe you lost them. I clenched my fists. This was a test. She wanted to see how I would react. If I got angry, if I accused her, she would know for sure that I was trying to leave. So I smiled. Yeah, maybe. She set down her cup and leaned forward. Why do you need them so badly, Lucas? My throat went dry. Work, I lied. She cocked her head. But you took the week off, didn't you? I swallowed hard. She had me trapped. And she knew it. I had no choice. If I couldn't leave, I had to get a message out. But without my phone, I had no way to contact Daniel. Unless. I waited until Sophia went to the shower. Then, as quietly as possible, I crept toward the landline phone in the kitchen. I knew she never used it, she preferred her cell. My hands were shaking as I picked it up and dialed Daniel's number. Ring. Come on. Ring. Pick up. Ring. Asterisk, hello. Asterisk. Relief flooded me. Daniel, I whispered. She knows. Silence. Then. Lucas, what do you mean she knows? She took my keys. My phone. She's watching me. My voice trembled. I think she's going to do something. Daniel's tone turned sharp. I'm coming now. I exhaled shakily. She won't let you in. Like hell she won't. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I turned. And there she was. Standing in the doorway. Watching me. Expression blank. Eyes cold. A slow smile crept across her lips. What are you doing, Lucas? My blood ran cold. She had caught me. My pulse pounded in my ears. Sophia stood in the doorway, her eyes dark and unreadable. I couldn't tell if she had heard the entire conversation or just the last few words, but either way, I was in trouble. I tightened my grip on the phone, my mind racing for an excuse. What are you doing, Lucas? She repeated, stepping closer. I forced a smile, trying to appear casual. Just calling the office, I lied. I wanted to check on something for next week. She didn't blink. Really? I nodded. Yeah. Didn't want to bother you with it. Her gaze flickered to the phone in my hand. Then why do you look so nervous? Damn it. She stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back. The distance between us shrank, and I could feel the tension in the air thickening. I think you're lying to me, she whispered. I forced out a chuckle. Come on, Sophia. Why would I lie? Her hand shot forward. Before I could react, she snatched the phone from my grip and pressed it to her ear. Daniel, she purred. My stomach dropped. She knew. She had known all along. Her eyes locked onto mine as she slowly placed the phone back onto the receiver. Then, without warning, she grabbed the base of the phone and ripped it from the wall. The sudden burst of violence made me flinch. You really think you can run from me? She whispered, her voice eerily calm. I didn't answer. I knew there was nothing I could say to defuse this. Then, as if nothing had happened, she smiled. Let's have breakfast, she said sweetly, turning on her heel and heading toward the kitchen. I just stood there, my body frozen. I needed to get out. And I needed to do it now. The escape plan. Daniel was on his way. That gave me one shot. One chance to break free before Sophia could stop me. I needed my keys. I needed my phone. And I needed to find them fast. I waited until Sophia was distracted, humming to herself as she prepared breakfast. Then, as quietly as possible, I began searching. I checked drawers, cabinets, under the couch cushions, nothing. Where the hell had she hidden them? Then I noticed something. Her purse. Sitting on the kitchen counter. Could it be that simple? I hesitated. If she caught me going through it, she would lose it. But I didn't have a choice. With my heart pounding, I slowly approached the counter. I reached for the purse, and then I felt her eyes on me. I turned just in time to see her standing in the doorway, holding a knife. A long, gleaming kitchen knife. My breath caught in my throat. She tilted her head, watching me with a small smile. Looking for something? I swallowed hard. Sophia, put the knife down. She twirled it in her fingers, her smile never faltering. You really don't trust me, do you? I forced myself to stay calm. Of course I do. Liar. She took a step forward. I took a step back. All I ever did was love you, Lucas, she whispered. And yet, you keep trying to run from me. Why? I could barely think. I needed to keep her talking, keep her distracted until Daniel arrived. I'm not trying to run, I said, forcing my voice to stay even. I just wanted my phone. That's all. She chuckled, shaking her head. You're a terrible liar. Her grip on the knife tightened. You don't love me anymore, do you? I hesitated. A mistake. Her expression darkened, and I knew I had seconds before she snapped. I needed to act. Now. Daniel's arrival. A loud knock on the door made her freeze. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then. Lucas. It's me. Daniel's voice echoed from the hallway. Relief flooded me. Sophia's grip on the knife slackened slightly. Go away, she called out sweetly. There was a pause. Then, more forcefully. Lucas, open the damn door. Sophia turned to me, her eyes full of rage. You told him to come here. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She knew. Her face twisted with anger, and for a second, I thought she was going to lunge at me. Instead, she did something worse. She turned, bolted toward the bedroom, and locked the door behind her. Then. I heard the sound of drawers opening. Rummaging. Searching. For what? My stomach twisted with fear. I knew what. And I had no time to stop her. I raced toward the front door, unlocking it just as Daniel shoved his way inside. What the hell is going on? Before he could finish, we both heard it. The sound of metal clicking. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. My blood turned to ice. Sophia. I shouted. Put it down. Silence. Then, through the door, her voice. Soft. Dangerous. If I can't have you, Lucas, no one can. I froze. Daniel's hand clamped down on my shoulder. I could feel his pulse racing as fast as mine. Is that, he whispered. I nodded. A gun. She had a gun. I had no idea where she got it. No idea if it was loaded. No idea if she was serious or just trying to scare me. But I couldn't take the chance. I stepped toward the locked bedroom door. Sophia, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm, we don't have to do this. No response. I pressed my ear against the wood. Soft breathing. A muffled sob. Then. The quiet click of the safety being turned off. My stomach dropped. Daniel swore under his breath. This is bad, man, he whispered. We need to call the cops. I nodded, reaching for my pocket, only to remember my phone was still missing. Daniel pulled his out and dialed. Before he could hit send. I wouldn't do that. Sophia's voice came from behind the door. Slow. Controlled. It sent chills down my spine. If you call the police, I swear to God, Lucas, I will make sure you regret it. Daniel hesitated. I shook my head and motioned for him to make the call anyway. He pressed the button. We both braced for what would happen next. A dangerous gamble. The silence stretched. I heard the dispatcher's voice on the other end of the line, asking what the emergency was. Sophia let out a soft, bitter laugh. You think they'll get here in time? She asked. Daniel didn't respond. My hands clenched into fists. Sophia, I said, stepping closer to the door, I don't know what's going on in your head right now, but we can fix this. You don't have to do anything you'll regret. Silence. Then. You already regret me, don't you? Her voice wavered. My throat tightened. How was I supposed to answer that? I wanted to tell her what she needed to hear, to talk her down. But lying wouldn't help. So I told her the truth. Sophia. I loved you. But this isn't love. A choked sob. You're lying. I'm not. I took a deep breath. You can come back from this. Put the gun down. Let's talk. More silence. I glanced at Daniel. He kept his phone close to his ear, nodding slightly. Help was on the way. I just had to keep her occupied. But then. A single, whispered sentence made my blood run cold. It's too late. A dangerous move. I heard rustling inside the room. The floorboards creaked as she moved. Then. A sudden thud. Something had hit the floor. I tensed. Was it the gun? Or? Daniel's eyes widened. We have to go now, he whispered. He reached for the doorknob and twisted it. Locked. Without hesitation, he stepped back and threw his shoulder against the door. The wood cracked but didn't break. Another slam. Then another. With a final, forceful shove, the door burst open. I rushed inside. And stopped cold. Sophia was sitting on the floor, her back against the bed. Her hands trembled as she clutched the gun in her lap. Tears streaked her face, her expression a mixture of rage and despair. Her eyes met mine. You should have stayed, she whispered. I took a cautious step forward. Sophia, put it down. She shook her head. I gave you everything, she said, her voice cracking. I loved you, Lucas. And you just threw me away like garbage. Daniel shifted behind me, ready to move if things got worse. I raised my hands, my voice soft. You need help, Sophia. We can get through this, but you have to let me go. A flicker of pain crossed her face. Then, her grip on the gun tightened. I don't want to let you go, she whispered. I took another step. And then. The sirens blared outside. Flashing red and blue lights painted the room. Sophia's breath hitched. Her eyes darted to the window, to the cops stepping out of their vehicles. A flicker of panic. This was it. She had seconds to decide. And so did I. Without thinking, I lunged. I grabbed the gun just as she raised it. A struggle. She screamed, thrashing, trying to pull the trigger. But I twisted it from her hands. She let out a sob as I stepped back, holding the weapon away from her reach. Daniel moved fast, pinning her arms behind her back as she collapsed into heaving sobs. The front door burst open. Officers stormed in, weapons raised. Daniel quickly stepped aside, letting them take over. Sophia didn't fight anymore. She just crumpled to the floor, sobbing into her hands. As they pulled her to her feet, she looked at me one last time. Her lips trembled. I really did love you, she whispered. Then, they led her away. And just like that. It was over. The aftermath. I didn't move for a long time. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded. But I wasn't. Not really. I walked to the kitchen in a daze, slumping into a chair. The house was a wreck, broken furniture, shattered dishes, overturned chairs. The remnants of a life I had once thought was perfect. And now, it was just gone. I rubbed my hands over my face, trying to process it all. She's gonna be locked up, right? I asked finally. Daniel hesitated. Maybe. I frowned. He sighed. With her mental state, there's a chance they'll send her to a psychiatric facility instead of prison. I exhaled slowly. That was probably for the best. As much as I hated what she had done, I didn't want to see her rot in a cell. I just wanted her gone. Forever. The officers came back with a few more questions. I answered on autopilot, my brain still struggling to catch up with everything that had happened. Eventually, they left. The house was silent. I looked around, taking it all in. This place didn't feel like home anymore. And for the first time in years, I realized I was finally free. The silence in the house was suffocating. For the first time in years, I was alone, truly alone. No fights. No insults. No broken dishes or smashed suits. Just me. And yet, instead of relief, a strange emptiness settled in my chest. I stood in the wreckage of what used to be my home, my fingers tracing the deep scratches on the dining table where Sophia had once dragged a knife across the wood in a fit of rage. The place felt haunted. Not by ghosts, but by memories. Memories of passion. Of chaos. Of love that had turned into something twisted. I sighed and grabbed a trash bag, mechanically picking up the shattered remains of my life. Piece by piece. The weight of the past. The next few weeks were a blur. Sophia was officially placed under psychiatric evaluation, and I was told there was a strong possibility she wouldn't serve traditional jail time. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. She was dangerous. Unstable. A threat to herself and others. And yet, a part of me still remembered the woman I first met. The one with the bright eyes and contagious laugh. The one who made me feel like I was finally enough. That version of her was gone. Or maybe, she had never truly existed in the first place. I forced myself to push those thoughts aside. There was no point in dwelling on the past. I had to move forward. And that started with getting rid of everything that reminded me of her. Burning the bridges. I packed up her things in boxes and left them at the curb. Her perfume bottles, her clothes, the framed photos of us smiling like we had the world at our feet. I considered keeping a few things, maybe as a reminder, a lesson. But then I stopped myself. I didn't need a lesson. I had already learned enough. The past had nearly destroyed me. I wasn't going to let it linger any longer. So I did the only thing that felt right. I threw it all away. Every single piece of her. Gone. Facing myself. Cleaning the house was easy. Cleaning my mind. Not so much. The nights were the worst. I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my body tense as if waiting for the next explosion. The next fight. The next slap across the face. But it never came. The silence was unfamiliar. Unsettling. I spent hours replaying everything that had happened. Every red flag I had ignored. Every excuse I had made for her behavior. I hated how blind I had been. How desperate I was to believe in the illusion of happiness. I blamed myself. Not for her actions, those were hers alone. But for staying. For letting it get that far. For losing myself in the process. But no more. I made a promise that night. I would never let myself fall into that trap again. No more toxic relationships. No more ignoring my gut. No more being someone else's punching bag, physically or emotionally. I had escaped. Now, it was time to start living again. Rebuilding my life. The first step was finding a new place. I couldn't stay in that house. Too many ghosts. I found a small apartment on the other side of town, nothing fancy, but it was mine. A fresh start. I took up running, something I hadn't done in years. It helped clear my mind, helped me shake off the weight of everything I had been carrying. I started reconnecting with friends, the ones I had drifted away from while drowning in my relationship with Sophia. It felt good to laugh again. To talk about things that weren't fights and accusations and fear. For the first time in forever, I felt like me again. Not just someone's boyfriend. Someone's victim. Just Lucas. Hope for the future. Love was the last thing on my mind. I had learned my lesson the hard way. But deep down, I knew I didn't want to be alone forever. One day, maybe, I would meet someone new. Someone who didn't manipulate. Didn't destroy. Someone who made love feel safe again. But until then, I was okay on my own. I had survived the worst. And now, I was finally free. Free to heal. Free to live. Free to start over. And this time, I was going to do it right.